What if a simple act of kindness, a daily gesture you thought no one noticed, was actually a test? For Isabella Rossi, a 24-year-old waitress drowning in debt and faded dreams. Kindness was all she had left to give. Her recipient was Arthur, a silent, grumpy old man who shuffled into her diner every morning, a ghost at a corner booth. She offered him a warm smile, a fresh coffee, and a small piece of her time, expecting nothing in return. She thought he was just another lonely soul. She had no idea he was guarding a secret, worth billions a secret, that was about to detonate her life. Because one rainy Tuesday, the diner door didn't open for Arthur. It opened for his lawyers, flanked by 4 stone-faced bodyguards, and they were there for her. The bell above the door of the Morning Glory diner was the soundtrack to Isabella Rossi's life. It wasn't a cheerful jingle. It was a tired, metallic chime that announced the arrival of another customer needing coffee, another plate to carry another dollar to hopefully add to the tip jar. The diner itself was a relic, a capsule of worn-out vinyl booths, the color of dried mustard, a sticky linoleum floor, and a persistent aroma of burnt coffee and frying bacon. For Isabella, or Bella as everyone called her, it was both her prison and her sanctuary. For the past 3 years, 6 days a week from 5:30 a.m. to 3:00 p.m., Bella had danced the familiar ballet of the Waitress. She navigated the narrow aisles with a grace born of repetition, balancing plates on her arm, refilling coffee cups without spilling a drop, and manufacturing a smile that often felt as cracked as the porcelain mugs she washed by hand. Her real passion, her soul, was locked away in a tiny second-floor apartment a few blocks away, gathering dust on canvases she could no longer afford. Art school had become a distant dream, buried under a mountain of her mother's medical bills and the crushing weight of rent. Her regulars were a predictable cast of characters. There was Frank, the construction foreman, who read the sports page and left exactly a $1 tip regardless of his bill. There were the 2 chatty secretaries from the law office down the street who dissected their boss's love life over wilted salads. And then there was Arthur. Arthur was different. He wasn't a regular in the traditional sense. He was a fixture, as much a part of the diner as the humming neon sign out front. Every single morning at precisely 7:15 a.m., he would push open the heavy glass door and shuffle to booth 4, the one in the back corner by the window. He never made eye contact with anyone. He wore the same outfit, a faded tweed coat, no matter the weather-worn trousers and scuffed leather shoes. His face was a road map of wrinkles, his eyes a pale, watery blue that seemed to look right through everything. He was a whisper in a loud room. The first time he came in, Bella's boss, a perpetually stressed man named Sal, had warned her. "Don't bother with the old coot in 4. He doesn't talk. Just give him black coffee and the daily special, whatever it is. He'll pay in exact change and leave." Brenda, the veteran waitress who had the patience of a wasp, sneered. "Waste of a 4-top. We should stick him at the counter." But Bella saw something else in his stoic silence. She saw a profound loneliness, a quiet dignity that touched the artist's heart still beating within her. So she ignored Hall's advice. The first day she placed the menu in front of him. "Good morning, sir. My name is Bella. Can I start you with some coffee?" He just grunted, not looking up. She poured the coffee anyway. When she brought the special a greasy plate of eggs and sausage, she noticed his hands trembled slightly as he reached for the salt. The next day, she did the same, and the next. For a week, he met her cheerful greetings with silence, but Bella was persistent. "The toast looks extra good today," she'd say. Or, "There's a bit of a chill out there. This coffee should warm you right up." Then one Monday morning, about a month into his silent patronage, as she set down his plate, she noticed him struggling to cut his toast with the diner's dull knives. His knuckles were swollen with arthritis. Without a second thought, she picked up the knife. "Allow me," she said, gently. She cut his toast into 4 perfect, manageable squares. For the first time, Arthur looked up. His watery blue eyes met hers, and for a fleeting second she saw a flicker of surprise, maybe even gratitude. He gave a short, sharp nod, then looked back at his plate. It was a victory. From that day forward, it became their ritual. She'd bring his coffee, black. She'd bring him the daily special. And she would always cut his toast. Sometimes she'd talk to him, filling the silence with little stories about her day. The funny thing a customer said, or her dream of one day visiting the Louvre in Paris to see the masterpieces in person. He never responded, but she felt he was listening. He would occasionally leave an extra quarter on the table, a silent acknowledgement that felt more valuable to her than a $20 tip. Her co-workers teased her relentlessly. "Still talking to your boyfriend," Bella Brenda would mock, wiping down the counter with a sour look. "You're wasting your breath. He's probably deaf." "Leave her alone," Sal would grumble from behind the grill. "If she wants to talk to a brick wall, let her. At least he doesn't complain." Bella didn't care. Those 10 minutes every morning became a strange anchor in her chaotic life. In a world that demanded everything from her and gave little in return, this small one-sided connection felt pure. It was a simple act of service, a moment of quiet communion. She wasn't doing it for a bigger tip or for praise. She was doing it because when she looked at the lonely old man in booth 4, she saw a human being who deserved a little bit of warmth, even if he couldn't or wouldn't ask for it. She had no idea that her simple kindness was being observed, catalogued, and judged by a mind sharper than anyone in the Morning Glory diner could possibly imagine. The Tuesday started like any other. The air was thick with the smell of rain and sizzling bacon. Bella was running on 4 hours of sleep, having spent most of the night on the phone with a nurse at her mother's care facility, discussing medication changes and mounting bills. She felt a familiar knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach, but she pushed it down, pinning her professional smile in place as she tied her apron. 7:15 a.m. came and went. Booth 4 remained empty. Bella glanced at the clock, then at the door, a small furrow in her brow. Arthur was never late. Never. He was as reliable as the sunrise. By 7:30, a tendril of genuine concern began to creep into her thoughts. Maybe he was sick. He was old after all. She made a mental note to ask the other regulars if they knew where he lived, though she doubted anyone did. He was an island. At 8:05, the bell above the door chimed, but it wasn't Arthur. The entire diner fell silent. Even the sizzle from Sal's grill seemed to hush. 4 men, all built like refrigerators and dressed in immaculate black suits with earpieces, stepped inside. They moved with a fluid, disciplined precision that was utterly alien to the sticky-floored diner. 2 flanked the door, their eyes scanning the room with unnerving stillness. The other 2 stepped aside to allow a 5th man to enter. He was older, perhaps in his late 60s, with silver hair swept back from a high forehead and a face that was all sharp angles and intelligent eyes. He wore a tailored charcoal grey suit that probably cost more than Bella earned in a year. In his hand, he carried a pristine leather briefcase. He looked around the diner, his expression a mixture of mild distaste and focused purpose. "Can I help you?" Sal asked, wiping his greasy hands on his apron. His usual bluster completely gone. The man in the charcoal suit ignored him. His gaze swept the room until it landed on Bella, who was standing frozen by the coffee machine, a pot still in her hand. He walked directly toward her, his expensive Italian shoes making soft, decisive sounds on the linoleum. The two bodyguards followed a few paces behind their presence, sucking the very air out of the room. "Are you Ms. Isabella Rossi?" the man asked. His voice was calm, deep, and carried an authority that demanded an answer. Bella's heart hammered against her ribs. She could only nod, her throat suddenly dry. What was this? Was she in some kind of trouble? Did she witness something? Was this about her mother's bills? The man stopped in front of her. He gave her a long, appraising look. "My name is Marcus Davies. I am a senior partner at the law firm of Sterling, Cromwell and Davies. I was the personal attorney for Mr. Arthur Pendleton." The name hung in the air. Pendleton. It sounded so formal, so important. It took Bella a moment to connect it to the quiet old man in booth 4. Arthur. His name was Arthur Pendleton. "Arthur," she whispered. "Is he okay?" "He didn't come in this morning." Mr. Davies's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. "Mr. Pendleton passed away peacefully in his sleep late last night." The coffee pot suddenly felt immensely heavy in Bella's hand. A wave of unexpected grief washed over her. It was absurd. She barely knew him. He never said a word to her, but their silent ritual had become a part of her life, a small, steady point in her turbulent world. Now it was gone. Tears pricked at the back of her eyes. "Oh," she said, her voice small. I'm so sorry to hear that." Brenda was watching from the counter, her mouth agape. Frank had lowered his newspaper. The entire diner was rapt, silent witnesses to a drama they didn't understand. Mr. Davies nodded curtly, as if acknowledging a required pleasantry. Mr. Pendleton was a very specific man, with very specific instructions. His final will and testament contains a provision that requires your immediate presence. If you would be so kind as to gather your things, a car is waiting outside to take us to my office for the reading. Bella stared at him, bewildered. "The Wilmy. I think you have the wrong person. I just served him coffee." "There is no mistake, Ms. Rossi Davies," said his voice, firm, but not unkind. Mr. Pendleton was quite clear. "Your name is Isabella Rossi. You are a waitress at this establishment. And for the past year and a half, you have cut his toast into 4 equal squares every morning without fail, and without ever being asked." The detail was so specific, so mundane, that it stunned Bella into silence. He had noticed. Not only had he noticed, but he had told his lawyer about it. "Sal," she said, turning to her boss, who was looking pale and confused. I don't know what this is." "Go," Sal grunted, finding his voice. "Go on. Brenda, cover her tables." Brenda shot Bella a look of pure, venomous envy, but didn't dare argue. Numbly, Bella untied her apron, her hands shaking. She placed it on the counter, grabbed her worn satchel from the break room, and walked back out into the diner. The 4 bodyguards and the lawyer formed a protective circle around her, creating a bizarre bubble of wealth and power in the humble diner. As they escorted her out the door, leaving the entire clientele speechless, Bella felt a dizzying sense of unreality. The cold, damp air hit her face. A sleek black town car, A Lincoln Continental was idling at the curb, its engine a low purr. One of the bodyguards opened the door for her. As she slid onto the plush leather seat, a seat more luxurious than any piece of furniture she owned, she looked back at the Morning Glory diner. It looked small and set under the grey sky. She had a terrifying, electrifying feeling that she would never see it the same way again. The ritual was over. Something new and infinitely more complicated was just beginning. The ride to the law office was a silent, surreal journey through the city. Bella stared out the tinted windows at the familiar streets which now looked alien and distant. The car was an oasis of quiet luxury, smelling of leather and polish. Mr. Davies sat opposite her reviewing documents from his briefcase, his face an unreadable mask of professionalism. Bella's mind was a whirlwind of confusion and a dull, aching sadness for the old man she never truly knew. The offices of Sterling, Cromwell and Davies were located in the penthouse of a gleaming skyscraper in the heart of the financial district. It was a world away from the Morning Glory diner. Marble floors, towering glass walls with panoramic city views and hushed art-filled corridors greeted them. Bella, in her faded jeans and worn-out sneakers, felt like a stray cat that had wandered into a palace. She was led into a vast boardroom, dominated by a long, polished mahogany table. At one end sat two people who looked as out of place as Bella felt, though for different reasons. They radiated an aura of impatient, resentful privilege. The man was in his late 20s, with slicked-back hair, a designer suit that looked a little too tight, and a petulant scowl. The woman beside him, presumably his mother, was impeccably dressed, her face a carefully constructed mask of polite disdain, her fingers drumming impatiently on the table. Mr. Davies cleared his throat as they entered. Miss Diana Pendleton. Mr. Caleb Pendleton. This is Miss Isabella Rossi. Caleb Pendleton's eyes swept over Bella in a single dismissive glance, a sneer twisting his lips. This is who we've been waiting for. A waitress grandfather's gone senile after all. Caleb. Please, his mother, chided, though there was no real heat in her words. Her gaze on Bella was just as cold. Miss Rossi. Please have a seat, Mr. Davies said, gesturing to a chair far down the table from the Pendletons. The distance felt intentional, a chasm between two different worlds. Bella sat her hands clenched in her lap. The bodyguards stood impassively against the far wall. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Now that all parties mentioned in the primary codicil are present, we can begin. Davies announced, opening a thick, leather-bound document. He put on a pair of reading glasses and began to read in a dry, emotionless monotone. Most of it was legal jargon that flew right over Bella's head, trusts' endowments to charities she'd never heard of, bequests to foundations. She listened to the staggering sums being discussed, numbers that felt more like concepts than actual money. The Pendleton fortune was clearly immense. Then Davies paused and looked directly at Diana and Caleb. To my daughter-in-law, Diana Pendleton, and my grandson, Caleb Pendleton, I leave the contents of the Pendleton Family Trust as contractually obligated by pre-existing family arrangements. This amounts to a principal sum of $10 million each. Caleb scoffed loudly. $10 million? That's it. That's an insult. The company is worth billions. Your grandfather liquidated the majority of his personal assets over the last 2 years. Caleb Davies said coolly. What he does with his personal fortune is and was his own prerogative. He owed it to us. We're his family. Diana snapped, her polite facade cracking. Davies ignored them and continued reading. All remaining personal effects, properties, and the controlling interest in the Pendleton Global Holding Company are to be dealt with as follows. He took a breath. To my friend and physician, Dr. Alistair Finch, I leave the sum of $1 million. He turned a page. Bella held her breath, not knowing why she was even here. Maybe Arthur had left her a small token, a few $100, as a final silent tip. That would be more than enough, a kind gesture from a quiet man. And now Davies said, looking over his glasses directly at Bella, his voice resonating in the silent room. We come to the final provision. He read from the will. To Miss Isabella Rossi, the young woman at the Morning Glory diner, who showed an old man kindness when she had no reason to, who treated him with dignity, when others saw only a nuisance, and who without fail cut his toast, because she noticed his hands trembled. Bella's eyes filled with tears. He had noticed everything. Davies continued. To Miss Rossi, I leave a legacy of kindness returned. First, I bequeath to her the sum of $250,000 to be transferred to her account immediately to ease her burdens as she once eased mine. Bella gasped. The room tilted. $250,000. It was more money than she had ever imagined holding. It would pay for her mother's care for years. It would clear her debts. It was a miracle. What Caleb exploded, leaping to his feet. He's giving $250,000 to a hash slinger. We'll contest this. He was clearly not of sound mind. Please, sit down, Mr. Pendleton. Davies said, his voice dropping to an icy calm. I am not finished. Caleb stared, then slowly sank back into his chair, his face flushed with rage. Davies adjusted his glasses and read the final sentence. And finally, because it was the last place on earth where I felt seen, not as a source of wealth, but as a human being, I leave her the one thing that brought me a small measure of peace in my final years. I bequeath to Ms. Isabella Rossi in its entirety the property and business known as the Morning Glory Diner, located at 152nd Street and Elm, which I purchased 6 months ago through a subsidiary company. Silence. A thick, profound silence filled the boardroom. Bella just stared, her mind unable to process the words. The diner. He bought the diner for her. Then Caleb started to laugh. It wasn't a happy sound. It was a sharp, ugly, incredulous bark. The diner. He leaves her a greasy spoon. Oh, that's rich. After all that build-up, he leaves the waitress her own cage. Grandfather really did have a twisted sense of humor. But Mr. Davies wasn't smiling. He closed the will, removed his glasses, and looked at Bella with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. It was a mix of pity-respect and warning. There is one more thing, Ms. Rossi, he said, his voice low. Included with the diner is the small investment portfolio Mr. Pendleton attached to the business to ensure its long-term viability and provide for capital improvements. It is currently valued at approximately $5 million. The laughter died in Caleb's throat. His face went from red to a sickly pale white. Diana's perfectly manicured hand flew to her mouth. Bella felt the floor drop out from under her. $5 million. The diner. It wasn't a cage. It was a kingdom. The grumpy, silent old man she had served coffee to the man she felt sorry for wasn't just wealthy. He was Arthur Pendleton, founder of Pendleton Global, a corporate titan, a king of industry who had hidden in plain sight, and he had just handed her a broke art student slinging hash in a greasy spoon the keys to a new life. A life that, judging by the murderous look in Caleb Pendleton's eyes, was about to become very, very dangerous. Leaving the law office was like stepping out of a hyperbaric chamber and into a hurricane. The bodyguards escorted Bella back to the Lincoln Continental, shielding her from the furious, sputtering insults of Caleb Pendleton, who had followed them into the hallway. "This isn't over, you little gold digger." He seethed, his face contorted with rage. "I'll have my lawyers crawl over every inch of this. You won't see a dime." Bella didn't respond. She was in a state of profound shock, her mind numbly replaying Mr. Davies's words. $5 million. The diner is yours. Mr. Davies had given her his card and a thick folder of documents. "A financial advisor will call you tomorrow, Ms. Rossi. Do not speak to anyone, especially the Pendletons. If they contact you, you call me immediately." Arthur, Miss Pendleton, anticipated their reaction. The car dropped her off in front of her run-down apartment building. The contrast was jarring. One moment she was in a world of mahogany and billions. The next, she was climbing the creaky, dusty stairs to her tiny apartment. She unlocked the door and stepped inside, the folder clutched to her chest like a life raft. Canvases were stacked against the wall. Her easel stood empty in the corner, a silent testament to a life deferred. The first thing she did was call her mother's care facility. With a trembling voice, she spoke to the financial administrator and paid the entire outstanding balance, then paid for the next 2 years in advance, requesting a private room and the best possible care for her mother. The relief that washed over her was so immense it brought her to her knees. She sat on her floor and wept, not for sadness, but for the sudden crushing release of a burden she had carried for so long. The next morning, Bella didn't go to the diner. She couldn't. What would she say? How could she walk in there? Instead, she went to the bank with a cashier's check for $250,000 that Mr. Davies had prepared for her. The bank manager, who usually treated her with polite indifference, ushered her into his private office with a newfound sycophantic respect. The world had already begun to shift around her. By the afternoon, she knew she couldn't hide forever. She had to face them. Taking a deep breath, she walked the familiar blocks to the Morning Glory diner. It was the middle of the lunch rush. Through the window, she could see Brenda looking hassled and Sal sweating over the grill. She pushed open the door. The little bell chimed. Every head turned. Conversations stopped. Sal looked up from the grill, spatula in hand. Brenda, holding a tray of burgers, froze mid-stride. They had all heard. The gossip from Frank, who had witnessed the lawyer's arrival, must have spread like wildfire. "Bella, Sal," said his voice uncertain. "Hi, Sal," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. She walked up to the counter. I guess you've heard." "Heard you came into some money," Brenda said, setting her tray down with a thud. There was a sharp, envious edge to her voice. "Decided you're too good to show up for your shift, huh?" "Brenda," Sal warned. "No, it's okay," Bella said. She looked from Sal to Brenda, then to the other staff peeking out from the kitchen. These people had been her world. "It's true. Arthur. Mr. Pendleton. He left me some money. And he left me the diner." A collective gasp went through the staff. Sal's spatula clattered onto the grill. "He what?" Sal sputtered. "I own this diner. I've owned it for 30 years. Bella's heart sank. This was the part Mr. Davies had warned her about. She opened the folder and pulled out a document. "According to this, Sal, you sold the diner 6 months ago to a company called AP Holdings. You've been operating as a salaried manager since then." Sal stared at the paper, his face turning ashen. AP Holdings. They offered me a fortune. More than this place was worth. I thought it was some big real estate developer who was going to tear it down. I never thought. He sank onto a stool, looking utterly defeated. So I've been working for the old man all this time. And now, I work for you. The absurdity of the situation hit everyone at once. Isabella Rossi, the quiet waitress who was constantly getting her hours cut, was now their boss. Brenda let out a short, bitter laugh. Well, isn't this a fairy tale? So what now, boss? Are you going to fire us all and hire your friends? The challenge hung in the air. This was her first test. Every eye was on her. She could feel the resentment, the disbelief, the fear. Her old life was gone. She was no longer one of them. She was the owner, the other. Bella took a deep breath, pushing aside her own shock and fear. She thought of Arthur, of his quiet dignity. What would he have wanted? No one is getting fired, she said, her voice clear and firm, surprising even herself. Nothing is changing right now. Sal, you're the best grill cook in the city. Brenda, you can handle a 6-table rush without breaking a sweat. This place runs because of you. I don't know the first thing about running a business. I'm going to need your help. Her honesty seemed to deflate some of the tension. Sal looked up, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Brenda just scowled, unconvinced. So what's your big plan? Brenda challenged. Are you going to start serving champagne and caviar? No. Bella said, a small smile touching her lips for the first time. But I am going to buy a new coffee machine and a knife sharpener, and we are going to fix the air conditioning. It was the right thing to say. A few of the kitchen staff chuckled. These were their daily complaints, the small miseries of their job. Hearing them acknowledged by the new owner, their former co-worker, meant something. Just then the bell on the door chimed again. A man in a messenger uniform stood there. Package for Isabella Rossi. He handed her a slim, elegant box from the Sterling, Cromwell and Davies law firm. Puzzled, Bella signed for it and opened it. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, was a single old-fashioned brass key and a handwritten note on heavy, cream-colored stationery. The handwriting was shaky, but clear. It was from Arthur. My dear Isabella, it began. If you are reading this, then the world knows my secret, and you have received my gift. The money is for your freedom. The diner is for your heart. This key is for your future. It opens my private study. Marcus knows where. Go there. Understand why. An old man's final request. A.P. A key. A secret study. Bella looked up from the note, her mind racing. The inheritance wasn't just money and a building. It was a mystery. And as she looked at the resentful faces of her new employees and thought of Caleb Pendleton's venomous threats, she realized she would have to solve it if she was ever going to truly claim her new life. The address Mr. Davies gave Bella for Arthur's private residence was on Park Avenue. It was one of those pre-war limestone buildings with a canopied entrance and a doorman who looked like a retired general. When the taxi pulled up, Bella felt a fresh wave of intimidation. She was wearing the nicest clothes she owned, a simple black dress she'd bought at a thrift store, but she still felt like an imposter. Mr. Davies was waiting for her in the lobby. His expression was somber. He hasn't allowed anyone into his personal apartment in over a decade, he explained as they rode a silent wood-paneled elevator to the penthouse. Not even his family. He conducted all his business from his corporate headquarters. This was his sanctuary. The elevator opened directly into the apartment. Bella stepped out and forgot to breathe. It was vast, with floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a breathtaking view of Central Park. But it wasn't the view or the scale of the place that stunned her. It was the art. The walls were covered with masterpieces. A Monet hung over the fireplace, its water lilies shimmering in the afternoon light. A Degas sculpture of a dancer sat on a pedestal. A small, intense Van Gogh self-portrait stared out from a side wall. It was a private museum, curated with impeccable taste. He was one of the world's most discreet art collectors, Davies said, softly, observing her reaction. This is what Caleb was truly after. This collection is priceless. The apartment was immaculate, yet it felt profoundly lonely. There were no family photos, no clutter, just priceless art and elegant, sterile furniture. It felt like a gilded cage. "The study is this way," Davies said, leading her down a long hall. He stopped at a heavy oak door. He gave me a sealed envelope with a key for myself, with instructions to open it only upon his death to grant you access. I will wait for you out here. Bella's hand trembled as she inserted the brass key Arthur had left her. It turned with a satisfying click. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. The study was completely different from the rest of the apartment. It was warm and lived in. Books crammed every shelf from classic literature to modern physics. A large worn leather armchair sat beside a fireplace. A faint scent of old paper and pipe tobacco lingered in the air. But what dominated the room was the wall behind the massive desk. It wasn't covered in art. It was a corkboard stretching from floor to ceiling, covered in a complex web of photographs, stock charts, legal documents, and handwritten notes connected by colored strings. It was the strategic map of a general commanding a global empire. This was the real Arthur Pendleton. At the very center of this web, however, was something that didn't fit. It was a small, slightly blurry photograph. Bella stepped closer. It was a picture of a woman laughing, sitting on a checkered blanket in a park. She was beautiful with kind eyes and a warm smile. Next to it was another photo, this one of the same woman, standing proudly in front of a small, charming storefront. The sign above the door read, "Eleanor's Eats." Bella's eyes were then drawn to a series of newspaper clippings, yellowed with age. The headlines told a tragic story. Promising restaurateur, Eleanor Pendleton dies in car accident. Corporate raider Harrison Vance acquires bankrupt restaurant chain. Pendleton Global announces hostile takeover of Vance Industries. It all started to click into place. Eleanor must have been his wife. She was a restaurateur, a creator of simple places for people to eat. She had been killed, and a corporate predator named Vance had seemingly profited from her death, only to be crushed years later by a venged Arthur. Drawn by a name, she looked at a different section of the board. It was dedicated to Caleb. There were photos of him on yachts in nightclubs with a string of models. There were financial reports showing massive losses from a tech startup he'd founded with his grandfather's money. There were copies of checks Arthur had written to pay off Caleb's gambling debts. One note in Arthur's shaky hand read, "He has her name, but none of her heart." Finally, her eyes found a small empty space on the board. Tacked to it was a single recent photo. It was a candid shot, taken from a distance of Bella herself. She was outside the Morning Glory diner on her break, smiling at something on her phone. Pinned next to it was a small handwritten note. "She has her heart." Tears streamed down Bella's face. It was never about the toast. Not really. He wasn't testing her kindness. He was looking for a reflection of his lost wife, Eleanor. He was searching for someone with a good heart, someone who understood that the value of a place wasn't in its price tag, but in the warmth and dignity it offered. The diner wasn't just any diner. It reminded him of his wife's dream. In leaving it to Bella, he wasn't just giving her a gift. He was entrusting her with Eleanor's legacy. Suddenly, a new determination hardened her grief. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about honoring the faith of a lonely old man who had lost everything that truly mattered to him. Caleb didn't just want the money. He wanted to destroy the last thing his grandfather had built, the one thing Arthur believed was a worthy legacy. She walked over to the desk. On it was a single sealed envelope addressed to her. She opened it. Inside was a letter and a stock certificate for a single share of Pendleton Global. The letter read, Isabella. Knowledge is power. This single share gives you the legal right to attend the annual shareholder meeting next month. Caleb will be there. He will try to seize control of the board. He thinks you are a nobody. Prove him wrong. Everything you need is in this room. Your friend, Arthur. Bella looked around the study, at the web of power, at the story of love, loss, and revenge. It was a complete dossier on the Pendleton Empire and its enemies. Arthur hadn't just given her a diner and a fortune. He had given her an arsenal. The war with Caleb Pendleton was coming, and Arthur had just armed his most unlikely soldier for the fight of her life. The following weeks were a blur of transformation for Bella. She spent her days at the diner and her nights in Arthur's study. Mr. Davies had arranged for her to have unlimited discreet access to the penthouse. The bodyguards now on her payroll would drive her there after her shift at the diner. At first, her presence at the Morning Glory was awkward. She tried to fall back into her old role, refilling coffees and taking orders, but Sal and the others wouldn't let her. "You're the owner now, Bella," Sal said gently, taking a coffee pot from her hand one afternoon. "You should be in the office looking at the books. Let us handle this." He was right. She retreated to the tiny, cluttered back office and began to learn. With the help of the financial advisor Arthur had arranged, she started to understand profit margins, supply chains, and payroll. The $5 million portfolio wasn't just a lump sum. It was a carefully managed fund designed to generate steady income, more than enough to cover the diner's expenses and a handsome salary for her. She gave the entire staff a raise, starting with Sal and Brenda. Brenda, who had been her harshest critic, was the most resistant to the change. She watched Bella with suspicion, as if waiting for the other shoe to drop. The turning point came one sweltering afternoon, when the ancient air conditioner finally died with a groan and a puff of smoke. The kitchen became an inferno. "That's it, I quit," Brenda announced, throwing her apron down. "I'm not working in a sauna." The old Bella would have pleaded with her. The new Bella nodded. "You're right," she said calmly. "It's unacceptable." She got on the phone. Within 2 hours, a team of technicians was there, installing a brand new top-of-the-line commercial air conditioning system. She paid for the emergency installation without blinking. The next day, the diner was cool and comfortable. Brenda came back to work, didn't say a word, but started calling her boss, and for the first time it didn't sound like an insult. Bella had earned a sliver of respect, not with words, but with action. Her nights were spent in a different world. In Arthur's study, she became a student of power, with Mr. Davies as her reluctant tutor. She began to unravel the complex web on the corkboard. She learned about shell corporations, leveraged buyouts, and proxy battles. She read Arthur's private journals, filled with his observations on business life, and his profound, unending grief for Eleanor. She learned about Caleb's recklessness, his failed ventures funded by his grandfather, and his deep-seated resentment. She discovered Arthur's masterstroke. In his final years, he had been systematically breaking up pieces of Pendleton Global, making the core company leaner, but also more vulnerable. He had converted most of his personal fortune into a series of anonymous charitable foundations. Caleb's inheritance was intentionally capped. Arthur had starved his grandson of the resources needed for an easy corporate takeover. Caleb thought he was inheriting a kingdom. Arthur had left him a battlefield with a depleted army. The one thing Caleb did have was the support of a few key board members who were loyal to his father and saw him as the rightful heir. His plan, as pieced together from Arthur's notes, was clear. At the upcoming annual shareholder meeting, he would call for a vote of no confidence in the current CEO, a loyalist appointed by Arthur, and use his family name and the support of his allies to get himself installed as chairman. He can't win outright. Mr. Davies explained one evening, pointing to a chart of major shareholders. But he can cause chaos. He can spook the investors, drive the stock price down, and try to force a sale to a rival corporation who will install him as a puppet leader. His ego won't accept anything less than total control, even if it means burning the empire to the ground. So how do we stop him? Bella asked, looking at the single share certificate on the desk. It seemed so insignificant. We use the one thing Arthur left you the truth, Davies said. That single share gives you the right to be in that room, and the right to speak to the shareholders. We can't outvote him, but perhaps we can outmaneuver him. Working late into the night, they formulated a plan. It was audacious, terrifying, and relied entirely on Bella's ability to step onto the biggest stage of her life and convince a room full of sharks that a waitress from a greasy spoon knew better than the heir to the Pendleton fortune. The day of the shareholder meeting arrived. Bella stood in front of the full-length mirror in Arthur's penthouse bedroom. She wasn't wearing a thrift store dress. Mr. Davies had insisted she use a personal shopper. She was wearing a simple but impeccably tailored navy blue suit. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun. She looked professional, calm, and confident. But inside her heart was a trapped bird. "You're ready," Mr. Davies said from the doorway. He looked at her, and for the first time she saw a genuine smile on his face. Arthur would be proud. 2 of her bodyguards escorted her. As she walked through the gleaming lobby of the Pendleton Global Tower, she saw him. Caleb was standing with his allies, laughing, oozing arrogance. He saw her, and his face froze, his expression shifting from shock to contemptuous amusement. "Well, look what the cat dragged in," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Come to serve coffee, sweetheart." His cronies snickered. Bella didn't rise to the bait. She met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "I'm a shareholder, Caleb," she said, her voice clear and steady. "And I have a right to be here." She walked past him, head held high, and into the lion's den, leaving him momentarily speechless. The battle had begun. The boardroom was an amphitheater of corporate power. A massive U-shaped table was filled with the board of directors, men and women with severe faces and expensive suits. Tiers of seats behind them were filled with major shareholders, analysts, and media. Bella, guided by Mr. Davies, took a seat in the front row, reserved for shareholders. She felt 100 pairs of eyes on her, whispering, questioning her presence. The meeting began with dry presentations and financial reports. Bella listened, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Then the chairman opened the floor for new business. Caleb immediately stood up, He was a natural performer, charming and confident. He spoke of legacy of his family's name and of a bold new vision for the future. He painted the current leadership as stagnant and unimaginative. My grandfather was a legend. He boomed, but his time has passed. Pendleton Global needs new blood, a new direction to compete in the 21st century. It needs a Pendleton at the helm. He then formally made his motion, a vote of no confidence in the CEO, and the nomination of himself, Caleb Pendleton, as the new chairman of the board. A tense murmur went through the room. Caleb's allies on the board voiced their support. It was clear he had momentum. The CEO, a capable but uncharismatic man named George Riley, offered a weak defense that was quickly shot down. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this motion before we call the vote? The chairman asked, his gaze sweeping the room. This was it. With a silent nod from Mr. Davies, Bella stood up. A wave of confused whispers rippled through the audience. Who is she? What is she doing? Caleb smirked. I believe the floor is for shareholders, not the catering staff. I am a shareholder, Bella said, her voice amplified by the microphone at her seat. It trembled slightly at first, then found its strength. My name is Isabella Rossi. She didn't look at Caleb. She looked at the faces of the board members, the investors. Mr. Pendleton speaks of his grandfather's legacy. I'm here today because I too was a part of Arthur Pendleton's legacy. Not the legacy of billions of dollars and corporate takeovers, but the legacy of his final years. She told them her story. She didn't embellish it. She spoke simply and honestly about the Morning Glory diner, about the quiet old man in booth 4, about cutting his toast because his hands shook. The room, initially dismissive, grew quiet, listening intently. You see, in his final years, Arthur Pendleton wasn't interested in acquiring more companies. He was interested in one thing, character. He spent his days in a simple diner watching people. He wasn't looking for the next great CEO. He was looking for simple, honest decency. She then turned her attention to Caleb. Caleb Pendleton talks about a bold new vision. Arthur Pendleton's private records, which he left in my care, show Caleb's vision quite clearly. Mr. Davies stood and placed a file in front of the chairman. Copies for the board, he said grimly. Bella continued, her voice ringing with conviction. A vision that led to a $30 million loss on a failed tech venture. A vision that required his grandfather to pay off over $2 million in personal gambling debts. A vision of such recklessness that Arthur Pendleton in his own handwriting wrote, "My grandson has the ambition of a king, but the judgment of a fool." He didn't leave his empire to Caleb, not out of spite, but out of a fiduciary duty to protect it from the one person he knew would destroy it. Gasps echoed through the room. Caleb's face had turned a blotchy, furious red. These are lies. Slander. Are they? Bella challenged, her gaze unwavering. The documentation is all there. Arthur Pendleton saw that the heart of this company wasn't its stock price, but its integrity, an idea his grandson has never understood. She then played her final card. But I'm not here to ask you to believe me or to simply reject Caleb. I'm here to honor Arthur's true final vision. He didn't want another king on the throne. He wanted stewardship. She looked directly at George Riley, the beleaguered CEO. He left notes praising Mr. Riley's caution, his stability, his loyalty. He believed in him. But he also knew the company needed a soul. She turned back to the board. Therefore, as a shareholder, I propose an amendment to the company's charter. The creation of the Pendleton Legacy Foundation, to be funded by 10% of the company's annual profits, dedicated to supporting small businesses and funding educational scholarships. And I nominate myself, Isabella Rossi, owner of the Morning Glory Diner, and Arthur Pendleton's chosen heir to run it. It was a masterstroke. She wasn't asking for power over the company, but for a position of moral authority within it. She had tied Arthur's personal legacy directly to the company's future, offering the shareholders a story of redemption and purpose instead of a grubby power struggle. She had honored the stable CEO while simultaneously sidelining Caleb, not with corporate tactics, but with a simple, powerful story of character. The room was silent for a long moment, and then one of the oldest board members, a man who had known Arthur for 50 years, began to clap. Slowly then, all at once, the room joined him. Investors, analysts, even some of Caleb's own supporters, captivated by the story, and the brilliant maneuver applauded. Caleb stood frozen, his face a mask of utter defeat. He had been beaten not by a corporate raider, but by a waitress with a story. The vote was a formality. Caleb's motion was crushed. Bella's proposal was accepted unanimously. Months later, the Morning Glory Diner was renovated. It was clean, bright, and the kitchen was state-of-the-art, but the worn, mustard-colored vinyl on booth 4 remained preserved under a thin layer of protective plastic. A small, tasteful brass plaque was affixed to the wall above it. It read, "Arthur's Corner." Bella split her time between running the diner with Sal as her highly paid manager, and Brenda as her surprisingly loyal head of staff, and managing the new foundation, which was already changing lives. She finally had time to paint again, her canvases now filled with vibrant color. She had found the balance she never knew she was looking for between her old life and her new one, between art and commerce, between kindness and power. She had honored Arthur's legacy and in doing so had finally built her own. Isabella's story is a powerful reminder that the greatest investments we can make are not in stocks or bonds, but in each other. A simple act of compassion, a moment of dignity offered to someone who seems to have nothing, can ripple outward in ways we can never predict. Arthur Pendleton had all the money in the world, but he died searching for something money could never buy: genuine human connection. He found it in a humble diner, in the hands of a waitress who chose to be kind. Bella didn't just inherit a fortune. She inherited a responsibility, proving that true wealth isn't what you have, but what you do with it. Her story asks us a question. Who are the silent Arthurs in our own lives, and do we have the grace to notice them? If this story of unexpected kindness and hidden strength touched your heart, please take a moment to hit that like button to help us share it with more people. Let us know in the comments what you would have done in Bella's shoes. And don't forget to share this video and subscribe to the channel for more unforgettable, real-life stories that prove the most extraordinary things can happen to ordinary people. Thank you for listening.
The billionaire mocked arrogantly, "I'll give you $1 million if you serve me in Arabic." But the waitress's fluent reply left everyone speechless. Your support means everything. Like, comment, and subscribe so we can keep sharing stories like this. Let's start today's story. Table 7 needs attention. The Arab billionaire. Samantha Adams nodded at her manager, straightening her red apron before approaching the corner table. Working at Lumiere, Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant, meant dealing with the world's elite, movie stars, politicians, and billionaires who treated the staff like furniture. But it paid the bills, and after what happened at the UN 2 years ago, anonymity was exactly what she needed. The man at table 7 radiated wealth and power. Impeccably dressed in a midnight blue suit that probably cost more than her annual salary, he lounged in his chair like a king on a throne. His dark beard was perfectly groomed, framing full lips curved in perpetual amusement. Two other men in similar attire flanked him, but they were clearly subordinates. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to Lumiere. May I get you started with something to drink?" Samantha's professional smile never faltered, despite the way his eyes appraised her like merchandise. Instead of answering, he turned to his companions and said something in Arabic, triggering laughter from the group. Samantha stood patiently, her face betraying nothing. She'd dealt with worse. "A bottle of your 1982 Lafite Rothschild," he finally said, his accent subtle but distinctive. "And perhaps you could recommend something special?" His eyes lingered on her name tag, then traveled back to her face. "The chef's tasting menu is exceptional tonight, featuring a Wagyu beef course that's not on the regular menu," she replied smoothly. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "I'm not interested in what everyone else gets. I'm Karim Al-Fahad. Perhaps you've heard of me?" She hadn't, but nodded politely anyway. "I own the Falcon Hotel Group." He waited for recognition to dawn. When it didn't, irritation flickered across his face. "I just acquired the building across the street. Soon, this whole block will be mine. Congratulations, Mr. Al-Fahad. I'll fetch that wine for you." Samantha turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Wait." His tone had changed, carrying an edge of challenge. The restaurant had grown quieter, as if sensing the brewing spectacle. "I have a proposition for you." His companions smirked, exchanging glances. Samantha's stomach tightened, but her expression remained neutral. "Sir?" Karim reached into his jacket and withdrew a sleek leather wallet. With deliberate slowness, he extracted a check and placed it on the table. $1 million. His voice carried just loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "If you can take my dinner order in Arabic." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the pianist in the corner had paused. "That's inappropriate, sir," Samantha said quietly. "Is it?" Karim's smile widened. "I'm simply appreciating culture. Most Americans only speak one language, yes? Prove me wrong. $1 million. He tapped the check with a manicured finger. "Just a few sentences in Arabic. Or is that too difficult for a waitress?" The way he said waitress made it sound like the lowest profession imaginable. Heat crept up Samantha's neck, but not from embarrassment, from anger. He leaned back, triumphant at her silence. "As I thought. Well, the wine then. أود تقديم طلب الطعام سيدي. ماذا ترغب أن تأكل هذا المساء?" Samantha's Arabic flowed perfectly, her pronunciation flawless. "I would like to take your order, sir." "What would you like to eat this evening?" Karim froze, his smug expression evaporating. His companions looked equally stunned. She continued in Arabic, her voice gaining strength. "قد أقترح لحم الواغيو المتميز لدينا. إنه مطهي على نار هادئة لمدة 8 ساعات ومتبل بالأعشاب المستوردة من المغرب. May I suggest our signature Wagyu beef? It's slow-cooked for 8 hours and seasoned with herbs imported from Morocco." The restaurant had gone completely silent. Every eye was on their table. Karim recovered first, responding in Arabic. "حيث تعلمت التحدث بهذه اللهجة المثالية." Where did you learn to speak with such perfect dialect? جامعة هارفارد. قسم اللغويات. تخصصت في اللغات السامية. Harvard University, Linguistics Department. I specialized in Semitic languages. Samantha switched back to English. "Will that be all, Mr. Al-Fahad? Or would you like to hear my Farsi as well?" A flush crawled up Karim's neck. "You speak Farsi too?" "And Urdu, French, Russian, and enough Mandarin to get by." She gestured to the check. "Will you be paying that now or after your meal?" The nearby diners erupted in whispers. One woman actually applauded. Something shifted in Karim's eyes, irritation giving way to genuine curiosity. Harvard linguistics, Yet you're working as a waitress. Career changes happen. Samantha's smile tightened. Now about that wine. As she turned, Karim called after her, "The check is yours. I'm a man of my word." She paused, then looked over her shoulder. "Keep your money, Mr. Al-Fahad. I don't need your charity." The words tasted sweet as she walked away, head high. Behind her, Karim Al-Fahad stared in disbelief, for perhaps the first time in his adult life, completely at a loss for words. Karim couldn't take his eyes off her. The waitress, Samantha, according to her name tag, moved through the restaurant with quiet efficiency. Nothing in her demeanor suggested she was anything other than what she appeared to be. Yet she'd just spoken to him in impeccable Arabic, with a regional accent he typically only heard in diplomatic circles. "Should I have security look into her?" Ahmad, his head of security, murmured beside him. Karim waved the suggestion away. "No, but find out everything you can." His reputation for thorough research was legendary. No deal was signed, no property acquired, without exhaustive background checks on all involved parties. "Harvard linguistics to serving tables," he mused, swirling the ruby-red wine in his glass. "There's a story there." The truth was, Karim was bored. Building his hotel empire from the ruins of his father's business had consumed the past 10 years of his life. Now, at 32, he'd achieved everything he'd set out to do. The New York expansion was almost complete, his bid for the historic Drake building nearly secured. Success had become predictable, but this woman, she was a mystery. And mysteries were rare in his world. When she returned with their appetizers, Karim observed her more carefully. Subtle details he'd missed before, the way she carried herself, her perfect posture, the slight callus on her right middle finger, a writer's mark. Her hands moved with deliberate grace, placing each dish precisely. "These are compliments of the chef," she said, presenting delicate plates of seared scallops with truffle foam. "Please thank him for me." Karim maintained eye contact longer than necessary. "And I apologize for my behavior earlier. It was ungentlemanly." Her expression revealed nothing. "Enjoy your meal, sir." As she walked away, Ahmad leaned forward. "I have preliminary information," he said quietly. "Samantha Adams, 24 years old. Massachusetts driver's license shows a Cambridge address until 2 years ago. Then nothing until she appears in New York, 14 months ago. Current address is in Queens." "That's unusually light for you," Karim noted. "It's unusually difficult information to find," Ahmad replied, almost as if her records have been professionally scrubbed. Karim finished the thought, his interest deepening. In his experience, people who erased their pasts had something significant to hide. The meal progressed, each course more exquisite than the last, but Karim barely noticed the food. His attention remained fixed on Samantha, watching her interaction with other tables, noting how she shifted subtly between different personas to match each customer's expectations. When she brought their dessert, a deconstructed pistachio baklava with gold leaf, Karim decided to try again. "Ms. Adams, I wonder if I might ask you something." Her professional smile remained firmly in place. "Of course, Mr. Al-Fahad. Why would someone with your qualifications choose this profession?" He kept his tone conversational, genuinely curious rather than condescending. "Perhaps I enjoy it," she replied simply. "Do you?" A ghost of a real smile touched her lips. "Some days more than others. And today. Today has had its challenges." She glanced meaningfully at him. Karim found himself smiling in return. A genuine smile, not the practiced expression he used for business dealings. "The check still stands, $1 million, no strings attached." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Why?" "Because I made a bet and lost. I'm a businessman, Ms. Adams. I honor my contracts." "It wasn't a contract." "It was a joke at my expense. Then consider it compensation for my rudeness." She studied him for a long moment. "Donate it to the International Refugee Education Fund. They do good work." Before he could respond, a commotion at the restaurant entrance drew their attention. A tall man with silver hair in an expensive suit was arguing with the maître d'. Even from across the room, Karim could see the man was intoxicated. Samantha's entire demeanor changed in an instant. Her spine stiffened, and color drained from her face. Without another word to Karim, she turned and walked swiftly toward the kitchen. Karim watched with interest as the maître d' finally allowed the man inside. He stumbled slightly, scanning the restaurant with bloodshot eyes before focusing on Samantha's retreating back. "Sam!" His voice carried across the dining room. "Samantha Adams!" She froze momentarily, then continued walking without looking back. The man started after her, but was intercepted by the restaurant manager. "What's happening?" Faisal, Karim's other dinner companion, asked. "I'm not sure," Karim murmured, "but I intend to find out." He signaled Ahmad with a subtle gesture. His security chief rose smoothly and approached the developing situation, identifying himself to the manager with a discreet flash of credentials. After a brief conversation, Ahmad guided the intoxicated man toward the exit. By the time Samantha returned to their table, the incident was over. If not for the tightness around her eyes, she might have appeared completely composed. "Is everything all right?" Karim asked. "Yes. Will there be anything else, gentlemen?" Karim hesitated, then decided against pressing the matter. "Just the check, the real one," he added with a small smile. As she processed his payment, Karim made a decision. He wrote a different amount on the tip line, $10,000, and signed with a flourish. "This is too much," she said when she saw it. "Consider it an investment." "In what?" "A future conversation." He handed her his business card. "Call me if you ever decide you want more than this." Her eyes flashed. "Not all of us measure success by the size of our bank accounts, Mr. Al-Fahad." "No. What's your measure, then?" She returned his card. "Integrity, something money can't buy." As she walked away, Karim felt something unfamiliar stir within him. Respect mingled with fascination. He couldn't remember the last time anyone had spoken to him that way. "Sir," Ahmad said, returning to the table, "you should know something about that man." "Who was he?" "Victor Caldwell, former State Department official." Ahmad leaned closer. "And according to what I could find, Samantha Adams once worked directly for him. You need to leave, now." Lisa, Samantha's roommate, stood in the doorway of their tiny Queens apartment, arms crossed. Behind her, suitcases were already packed. "What's going on?" Samantha had just finished an exhausting double shift, her encounter with Karim Al-Fahad overshadowed by Victor Caldwell's unexpected appearance. She'd hoped to come home, take a hot shower, and collapse into bed. "Two men were asking about you in the building." Lisa's voice trembled slightly. "Showing your picture. Dark suits, earpieces. They didn't look like police." Cold dread washed over Samantha. "Did they see you?" "No. Mrs. Petrova from 3B warned me." "Sam, you promised when you moved in that whatever you were running from wouldn't follow you here." "I know. I'm sorry." Samantha moved quickly, grabbing the emergency bag she kept in her closet. Passport, cash, burner phone, and the small gun she'd hoped never to use again. "Is this about your old job, the one you never talk about?" Lisa demanded. Samantha paused, considering how much to reveal. Lisa deserved something after being such a good friend. "I used to work as a translator. I overheard something I shouldn't have. People died." She zipped up the bag. "That's all I can tell you." Lisa's expression softened. "Where will you go?" "Better if you don't know." "Nah," Samantha hugged her friend tightly. "I'll send money for rent until you find a new roommate." "Forget the rent. Just be safe." 20 minutes later, Samantha was in a taxi heading toward Brooklyn. She ditched her phone after sending one text to Marcus. her only contact from her previous life. He would understand the coded message, weather turning bad, seeking new climate. The past was catching up to her, just as she'd feared. Victor showing up drunk at the restaurant wasn't a coincidence. After 2 years of looking over her shoulder, she'd grown complacent, and now she would pay the price. The taxi dropped her at a busy intersection, and she walked 3 blocks before hailing another to throw off any potential tail. She checked into a small hotel using one of her alternate IDs, paid cash for 3 nights, and finally allowed herself to breathe. Sitting on the edge of the bed, Samantha tried to piece together what had happened. Victor appearing the same night as Karim Al-Fahad couldn't be coincidental. But what was the connection? The Al-Fahad name wasn't one she recalled from her time at the UN or State Department. Her phone buzzed. The burner. Marcus, mutual friend asking questions, not alone. Safe house compromise, meet at the museum, noon tomorrow. Samantha closed her eyes, exhaustion threatening to overwhelm her. Sleep would have to wait. She opened her laptop and began searching for information on Karim Al-Fahad. The publicly available data painted a clear picture. 32 years old, born to a moderately successful Saudi businessman and an American mother, educated at Oxford, inherited his father's struggling hotel business at 22 when both parents died in a plane crash. Over the next decade, he transformed one mid-tier hotel into the Falcon Hotel Group, a global luxury chain with properties on 5 continents. What interested Samantha more was what she couldn't find. No scandals, no political affiliations, no suspicious business dealings that might connect to her past work. By all appearances, Karim Al-Fahad was exactly what he claimed to be, a successful businessman with an arrogant streak. A knock at her door jolted her from her research. Samantha froze, hand moving to the gun in her bag. No one knew she was here. "Ms. Adams?" A male voice muffled through the door. "I apologize for the late hour." She recognized the voice. Ahmad, Karim's security chief. How had they found her so quickly? "I'm not here to harm you," he continued. "Mr. Al-Fahad would like to speak with you. It's important. Give me one reason why I should trust you." Samantha kept her voice steady, gun now in hand, because Victor Caldwell was found dead an hour ago. "And you're about to be framed for his murder." The world tilted beneath her feet. Victor dead. Impossible. "If you don't believe me, check the news," Ahmad said. Samantha grabbed her phone, finding a breaking news alert. Former State Department official found dead in Manhattan hotel. She approached the door cautiously. "How did you find me?" "We followed the men who were following you." That made a twisted kind of sense. She peered through the peephole. Ahmad stood alone, hands visible and empty. "Mr. Al-Fahad is waiting in the car," he said. "He believes he knows why this is happening, and he wants to help." "Why would he help me?" "Because his parents' plane crash wasn't an accident, and he believes the same people who killed them are now coming for you." Samantha's mind raced. The connection she'd been missing, it wasn't about her time at the UN. It was something earlier, from her father's diplomatic career. "My father," she said suddenly, "David Adams. He worked with the Saudi royal family in the 1990s. Ahmad nodded. "He saved Karim's father during an attempted coup. Tonight, Mr. Al-Fahad realized who you were." The pieces were falling into place with dizzying speed. Her father's mysterious death 5 years ago ruled a heart attack despite his excellent health. The classified files she'd discovered at the State Department, the conversation she'd overheard that had forced her into hiding. "I need answers," she said finally. "Mr. Al-Fahad has some," Ahmad replied, "and together you might find the rest." Samantha made her decision. She gathered her bag, tucked the gun into her waistband, and opened the door. Outside, a sleek black Bentley waited at the curb. As Ahmad opened the rear door, Samantha caught sight of Karim watching her, his expression grave. Gone was the arrogant businessman from the restaurant, replaced by someone altogether more dangerous. "Ms. Adams," he said as she slid into the seat beside him, "I believe we have a common enemy." "And who would that be?" His eyes met hers, dark with controlled fury. "The same people who murdered our fathers and are now trying to tie up loose ends, starting with Victor Caldwell and ending with us." The car pulled away from the curb, carrying Samantha into yet another uncertain future, this time with the most unlikely of allies. "We need to move quickly." Karim's penthouse overlooked Central Park, the glittering cityscape a stark contrast to the tension filling the room. "They'll realize you've disappeared soon enough." Samantha stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, arms crossed protectively over her chest. "I'm still waiting for you to tell me who they are." Karim poured 2 glasses of scotch, offering one to her. When she hesitated, he took a deliberate sip from her glass before handing it over. "Trust issues, understandable, given the circumstances." She accepted the drink but didn't taste it. "My father, Ibrahim al-Fahad, wasn't just a hotelier," Karim began, settling into a leather armchair. "He was an intelligence asset for the American government, specifically working with the CIA's Middle Eastern division throughout the 1990s. Samantha's eyes widened. "My father was stationed in Riyadh during that time." "Exactly. David Adams, cultural attaché. At least that was his cover." Karim's gaze was steady. "He was actually CIA, wasn't he?" She remained silent for a long moment before nodding. "Yes, but I didn't know that until after his death. Our fathers worked together to prevent a coup that would have destabilized the entire region. Your father saved mine during an assassination attempt in 1998. Karim pulled out his phone, showing her a faded photograph, 2 younger men standing together, smiling. One was clearly Ibrahim al-Fahad, the other David Adams. "I've never seen this," Samantha whispered, taking the phone. "They became friends, not just assets and handlers. When my father married my American mother, your father was best man at their wedding." Karim's voice softened. "After the coup attempt failed, my father was relocated to London, where I was born. We returned to Saudi Arabia only after things had stabilized, but he maintained his connection to American intelligence." "And this relates to Victor Caldwell how?" Samantha asked, handing back the phone. "Caldwell was State Department, but he had deep CIA connections. When my parents died in that plane crash 10 years ago, he was the one who handled the American side of the investigation." "Which concluded it was an accident," Samantha noted. "Yes, except it wasn't." Karim's jaw tightened. "The official story was mechanical failure, but I've spent years gathering evidence that the plane was sabotaged by the same faction that attempted the coup years earlier. That's a serious accusation. I have proof." Karim pulled a leather portfolio from his desk, spreading documents across the table. Bank transfers, encrypted communications, flight maintenance records that mysteriously disappeared from official reports. Samantha scanned the papers, her translator's eye quickly picking up inconsistencies in the Arabic documents. "These maintenance logs have been altered." "Yes, and I believe Victor Caldwell was involved in the cover-up." Samantha's mind raced. "When I worked at the UN as a translator, I overheard Caldwell discussing something called Operation Sandstorm with Saudi officials. I didn't understand the significance at the time, but when I mentioned it to him later, he became threatening." "What exactly did you hear?" Karim leaned forward. "Names, dates. Something about Phase 2 being initiated." She swallowed hard. 2 weeks later, classified documents appeared in my secure diplomatic pouch. Files that implicated Caldwell and others in selling intelligence to Saudi extremists. "The same extremists who tried to overthrow the government my father helped protect," Karim said grimly. "I took the documents to my superior, 3 days later, he died in a robbery gone wrong. That's when I ran. Samantha's hands trembled slightly. I changed my identity. Disappeared. I thought I was being paranoid until your father died of a convenient heart attack, Karim finished softly. Tears pricked her eyes. How did you know? Because that's their signature. My mother's brother died the same way 6 months after my parents. Clean, untraceable. Samantha finally took a long swallow of scotch. So, Victor's death wasn't your fault. It was a message. They're cleaning house, eliminating everyone who might connect them to Operation Sandstorm. Karim's eyes met hers, including us. Why now? After all this time? Because the final phase is approaching. Karim pointed to a document showing a complex transaction. They've been siphoning billions from Saudi sovereign wealth funds for years, using shell companies and cryptocurrency to hide the money. Next week, those funds are scheduled to be transferred to accounts controlled by former Saudi intelligence officials, the same ones who orchestrated the coup attempt 25 years ago. And they're planning to use that money for what exactly? To finance something big. Something that would destabilize not just Saudi Arabia, but the entire Middle East. Karim's expression darkened. I've been tracking their movements, their purchases, weapons, mercenaries. They're planning a coordinated strike across multiple countries. Samantha felt the blood drain from her face. How could they possibly pull that off without intelligence agencies knowing? Because they have allies inside those agencies, including Caldwell. The implications were staggering. Samantha paced the room, mind working furiously. We need to take this to the authorities. And tell them what? That a Saudi hotelier and an American waitress have uncovered an international conspiracy. Karim's laugh was bitter. We'd be dismissed as paranoid, or silenced before we could speak. Then what do you suggest? We find concrete proof linking them to Caldwell's murder and Operation Sandstorm. Evidence so irrefutable that even their allies in government can't ignore it. And where exactly do we find this proof? Karim's smile was dangerous. The annual Falcon Charity Gala is tomorrow night at my flagship hotel. Mohammed bin Rashid will be there. The man, I believe, orchestrated my parents' death and this entire operation. You want to confront a terrorist at your own charity event? No, Karim replied smoothly. I want to steal the evidence from his hotel suite while he's at my charity event. Samantha stared at him in disbelief. You can't be serious. Deadly serious. His security will be downstairs watching him. His suite will be vulnerable. That's insane. Even if we could access his room, what makes you think he'd bring incriminating evidence with him? Because I made sure he would. Karim's eyes gleamed. I've spent 10 years building this hotel empire for one purpose. To get close to these men, to earn their trust, to lure them into my territory. The realization dawned on Samantha. This whole time, your business, your success, was a means to an end. Karim's voice hardened. Justice for my parents. Samantha felt a newfound respect mingling with apprehension. She'd misjudged him. Beneath the arrogant billionaire exterior was someone driven by the same need for truth that had consumed her life. I still think this is crazy, she said finally. Do you have a better plan? She didn't. Besides, Karim added, you speak 6 languages and managed to disappear completely for 2 years. I suspect breaking into a hotel room isn't beyond your capabilities. Despite everything, Samantha found herself smiling. I never said I couldn't do it. I just said it was crazy. So you'll help? Their eyes locked, an unspoken understanding passing between them. 2 people from different worlds, connected by shared tragedy and a dangerous mission. Yes, she said finally, but we do this my way. Clean, professional, with contingency plans for when, not if, something goes wrong. Karim nodded, respect evident in his gaze. Agreed. Ahmad entered the room, his expression grave. Sir, there's been a development. The police are at Miss Adams's apartment. They've issued a warrant for her arrest in connection with Victor Caldwell's murder. Faster than I expected, Karim murmured. Samantha felt the walls closing in. I need to leave the country. No, Karim said firmly. That's exactly what they want, to flush you out, make you run. The moment you hit an airport or border crossing, they'll have you. So I'm trapped. No, Karim corrected. You're protected, for now. This penthouse has a private elevator and security measures that would impress the Pentagon. No one gets in without my authorization. He approached her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, sandalwood, and something uniquely his own. One night. Tomorrow we get the evidence, and then I'll have my jet ready to take us wherever we need to go. Samantha felt a strange flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with fear. Us. Gee, I started this hunt 10 years ago, Karim said quietly. I intend to see it through to the end. The intensity in his eyes stirred something in her, something she'd thought long buried beneath layers of trauma and survival instinct. One night, she agreed, stepping back slightly to break the tension. But I'm not wearing a ball gown to commit felony breaking and entering. Karim's smile returned, transforming his face. Actually, that's exactly what you'll be wearing. The perfect disguise is often hidden in plain sight. For the first time in years, Samantha felt a spark of hope amidst the danger. Tomorrow would change everything, one way or another. The sapphire gown shimmered under the chandeliers of the Falcon Hotel's grand ballroom. Samantha adjusted the delicate mask covering the upper half of her face, grateful for the anonymity it provided at this masquerade charity gala. From across the room, Karim caught her eye, raising his champagne glass slightly in acknowledgement. He looked devastating in his tuxedo, his own black mask lending him an air of mystery that suited him perfectly. No one would guess that beneath their elegant exteriors they were planning a high-stakes infiltration. Remember, Ahmad's voice came through the nearly invisible earpiece. Bin Rashid arrived 10 minutes ago, suite 4208. His security team has 4 men, 2 at the gala, 2 patrolling the executive floor. Copy that, Samantha murmured, pretending to sip her champagne. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. As host, Karim would keep Bin Rashid occupied at the gala. Samantha, introduced as Karim's date, a French art dealer named Isabelle Laurent, would excuse herself, then use the security credentials Ahmad had prepared to access the executive floor. Enjoying yourself, darling? Karim appeared at her side, placing a possessive hand at the small of her back. Immensely, she replied, affecting a slight French accent. Your charity events are always so stimulating. Wait until the after-party, he murmured, his lips close to her ear. To onlookers, they appeared to be sharing an intimate moment. In reality, he was updating her. Bin Rashid brought his entire entourage. Security is higher than we anticipated. Nothing I can't handle. Her confidence wasn't entirely feigned. The skills that had once made her an exceptional diplomatic translator, attention to detail, quick thinking, adaptability, had served her well during her 2 years on the run. Of that, I have no doubt. Something in his tone made her look up sharply. Their eyes met through their masks, and the genuine admiration she saw there caught her off guard. Mr. Al-Fahad, a heavily accented voice, interrupted them. A magnificent event, as always. Karim turned smoothly, his demeanor shifting to gracious host. Mr. Bin Rashid, I'm honored you could attend. Mohammed bin Rashid was a striking figure, tall and lean, with silver hair and a neatly trimmed beard. His eyes, however, were cold as they assessed Samantha. And who is this enchanting creature? Isabelle Laurent, Karim said, squeezing her hand in warning. "A dear friend from Paris." "Enchanté," Samantha murmured, extending her hand. Bin Rashid brought it to his lips. "The pleasure is mine, mademoiselle." Something about his touch made her skin crawl, but she maintained her smile. This man had orchestrated the deaths of Karim's parents, possibly her father, and countless others. "Isabel is curating my new art collection," Karim continued smoothly. "She has an exceptional eye for value." "Indeed," Bin Rashid's gaze lingered on her. "Perhaps she might offer her opinion on some pieces I've recently acquired." "Another time, perhaps," Karim intervened. "The auction is about to begin. Would you join me at the main table? You're seated at my right, of course." As they moved away, Bin Rashid glanced back at her. There was something in his expression, a flicker of recognition, that sent a chill down her spine. "Now," Ahmad's voice came through the earpiece, "the security shift change is happening. You have 12 minutes. Samantha waited 30 seconds, then made her way toward the exit, pausing to chat briefly with a waiter, establishing her presence in case anyone was watching. Once in the hallway, she moved quickly to the service elevator, swiping the security card Ahmad had provided. The executive floor was silent, the plush carpeting muffling her footsteps. Using the small tablet Ahmad had given her, she tracked the security guard's positions via the hotel's system. 2 red dots moved along the west corridor, heading away from Bin Rashid's suite. Perfect. Suite 4208 was secured with both a key card reader and a digital keypad. Ahmad had provided the override codes, assuring her they would work. Samantha held her breath as she entered the sequence, exhaling only when the light turned green and the lock disengaged with a soft click. Bin Rashid's suite was opulent, even by Falcon Hotel standards, a sprawling set of rooms with panoramic views of the Manhattan skyline. Samantha moved efficiently, searching for the briefcase Karim had told her to find. Bin Rashid never traveled without it, a custom-made Hermès piece with distinctive gold hardware. She found it in the bedroom, locked inside the closet safe. The override code worked here too, and the safe door swung open to reveal the briefcase. "I've found it," she whispered into her communicator. "Beginning extraction." The briefcase was secured with a biometric lock, fingerprint and retinal scan, normally impossible to bypass, but Ahmad had prepared for this. From her clutch, Samantha removed what looked like a compact mirror, but was actually a specialized electronic device. When placed over the biometric scanner, it cycled through stored patterns until it found a match. 2 minutes, Ahmad warned in her ear. "Guards are completing their rounds." The device beeped softly, and the briefcase clicked open. Inside were several folders and a small external hard drive. Samantha worked quickly, photographing each document with a miniature camera disguised as a lipstick tube, then downloading the contents of the hard drive to a duplicate that would leave no trace of the intrusion. What she saw made her blood run cold. Operation Sandstorm was far worse than they'd imagined. Not just a coup attempt, but a coordinated series of attacks designed to throw the entire region into chaos. The documents contained lists of operatives, financial transactions, weapons caches, and most damning, communications with someone identified only as American Eagle, Caldwell. The evidence was irrefutable: emails, photos, bank transfers, all linking Bin Rashid, Caldwell and others to a conspiracy of staggering proportions. 30 seconds, Ahmad urged. Samantha finished the download, replaced everything exactly as she'd found it, and closed the briefcase. She returned it to the safe, reset the lock, and was halfway to the door when she heard voices in the corridor. "Check on the package before rejoining Mr. Bin Rashid." Guards, coming to the suite. Samantha froze, calculating options. The bathroom? Too obvious. Under the bed? Juvenile. The balcony? Possibly, but risky. 42 floors above Manhattan left little margin for error. The voices grew closer. The card reader beeped. In a split-second decision, Samantha slipped behind the heavy floor-length curtains just as the door opened. She controlled her breathing, standing perfectly still as footsteps entered the suite. Two men, speaking Arabic. One checked the safe, a routine security measure. The other moved around the sitting room. Neither approached the curtains, but Samantha's heart hammered as one paused nearby. "All secure," one finally said. "Let's get back downstairs." The door closed. Samantha waited 30 seconds before emerging, legs slightly shaky from the adrenaline. "Status?" Ahmad's voice was tense. "Mission accomplished," she whispered. "Heading back now." The return journey went smoothly. Service elevator down to the mezzanine, then a quick stop in the ladies' room to compose herself before rejoining the gala. Karim found her immediately, his relief evident despite his mask. "Everything all right, darling?" he asked for the benefit of those nearby. "Perfect," she replied, smiling up at him. "Though I find myself with a bit of a headache. Perhaps we could leave soon." "Of course." He signaled a waiter for champagne. "One last toast, and we'll go." As they clinked glasses, bin Rashid approached again, this time with a stunning woman on his arm. "Leaving so soon, Al-Fahad? The night is young." "Isabel isn't feeling well," Karim explained smoothly. Bin Rashid's eyes narrowed slightly as he studied Samantha. "Have we met before, mademoiselle? Something about you seems familiar." Samantha's heart stuttered, but her smile never wavered. "I doubt it. I spend most of my time in Europe." "Perhaps at the diplomatic reception in Geneva last year?" he pressed. "I'm afraid not. I was in Barcelona that season." The lie came easily, her French accent impeccable. Something shifted in bin Rashid's expression, suspicion giving way to certainty. "No," he said softly. "I remember now. It was Washington, at the Saudi embassy." Ice flooded Samantha's veins. She had attended a function there during her UN days. Had he seen her? "You're mistaken," Karim interjected. "Isabel has never been to Washington." Bin Rashid smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "My apologies, then. Memory can be deceptive." As they made their excuses and moved toward the exit, Samantha felt bin Rashid's gaze following them. He knew. Somehow, he knew. In the limousine, she finally released the breath she'd been holding. "He recognized me." "Impossible," Ahmad said from the front seat. "Your disguise was perfect." He mentioned Washington, the Saudi embassy. She turned to Karim. "I was there 3 years ago translating for a UN delegation." Karim's expression darkened. "If he knows who you are." "Then we've lost the element of surprise," she finished grimly. "Did you get what we needed?" Samantha nodded, removing the miniature camera and flash drive from her clutch. "Everything. Names, dates, plans, and proof that Caldwell was their American contact." "Then we still have leverage." Karim took her hand, his touch unexpectedly gentle. "One more night. We compile the evidence, create insurance files, and tomorrow we take this to the one person who can help us." "Who?" "The current CIA director. My father's oldest friend." Hope flickered, then died. "If bin Rashid recognized me, we may not have until tomorrow." As if confirming her fears, Ahmad's phone buzzed. His expression turned grim as he read the message. "Security breach at the penthouse," he reported. "Someone tried to override the elevator access." Karim's grip on her hand tightened. "Change of plans. We're not going back to the penthouse." "Where then?" Samantha asked. "Somewhere they'd never look for a billionaire and a fugitive." The smile played at the corner of his mouth. "My mother's old apartment in Queens. I kept it after she died, never listed it under my name." As the limousine changed direction, heading toward the Queensboro Bridge, Samantha felt a strange sense of inevitability. In less than 24 hours, her world had been turned upside down yet again. But this time, she wasn't running alone. She glanced at Karim, finding him already watching her, his dark eyes intense. "Why are you helping me?" she asked softly. "You could have handed me over, saved yourself the trouble." "Because 10 years ago, I made a promise over my parents' graves to find the truth no matter the cost." His voice dropped lower. "And because when you answered me in Arabic at the restaurant, I saw something in you that I recognize in myself." "What's that?" "Someone who refuses to be broken by circumstance." The simple truth of his words touched something deep within her. For the first time in years, Samantha felt truly seen. As the city lights blurred past the windows, she allowed herself to lean slightly against his shoulder. Tomorrow would bring either justice or ruin, but tonight at least, she wasn't facing it alone. Dawn broke over the Queen's neighborhood, painting the modest apartment in soft golden light. Samantha sat cross-legged on the living room floor, surrounded by printouts of the evidence they'd stolen. Beside her, Karim reviewed financial records on his laptop, his suit jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, a far cry from the polished billionaire the world knew. Ahmad entered, setting down coffee and the burner phones he'd acquired overnight. "No signs of surveillance. The safe house is secure." "For now," Samantha murmured, sorting another document into her proof pile. They'd worked through the night, organizing the evidence into an airtight case that even the most skeptical authorities couldn't ignore. "Director Harlow has confirmed the meeting," Karim announced, checking one of the burners. "Noon today at the safe location." Samantha nodded, though anxiety gnawed at her. "If bin Rashid has already realized who I am, we'll be long gone before he can act," Karim assured her, placing a hand over hers. The casual intimacy of the gesture surprised them both, but neither pulled away. The past 18 hours had forged a connection between them that defied explanation. Perhaps it was their shared mission, or the parallel tragedies that had shaped their lives, or perhaps it was something more primal, the recognition of a kindred spirit in the most unexpected place. "What happens after?" she asked quietly. "If this works, if we bring them down, what then?" Karim considered this, his expression thoughtful. "I haven't allowed myself to think that far ahead. Revenge has been my purpose for so long. And now—" Their eyes met, unspoken possibilities hanging between them. Before Karim could answer, Ahmad's phone chimed. "Perimeter alert," he said sharply, moving to the window. "Black SUV, 2 men watching the building." "How?" Karim demanded. "This address isn't connected to me in any way." Samantha's mind raced. The charity guest list. If bin Rashid has access to facial recognition software, he could have identified me despite the mask. And if they're monitoring financial transactions. The caterers, Karim realized. I had them deliver food here last night. Paid from an account they could trace. "We need to move, now." Ahmad was already gathering the evidence, shoving it into a secure briefcase. They had prepared for this contingency. The apartment had 2 exits, the main door and a fire escape accessible through the bedroom window. Samantha quickly changed from her borrowed sweatpants and t-shirt into jeans and a hoodie, better suited for blending in and running if necessary. Karim emerged from the bedroom similarly dressed in casual clothes that would have been unrecognizable to anyone accustomed to seeing him in bespoke suits. With a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes and stubble darkening his jaw, he looked like an entirely different person. "Director Harlow is sending a security team," he informed them, checking the second burner phone. "ETA 20 minutes. "We may not have 20 minutes, Ahmad warned, peering through the blinds. 2 more men just joined the first team. They're approaching the building. Samantha felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, the same sensation that had kept her alive for 2 years on the run. "The fire escape. We can reach the subway before they realize we're gone." "And risk being separated," Karim shook his head. "We stay together." "There's no time to argue," Ahmad interrupted. "They're inside the building. A decision was made in seconds. Ahmad would create a diversion at the front entrance while Samantha and Karim escaped via the fire escape with the evidence. They would meet Director Harlow at the backup location, a boathouse in Central Park that Harlow had used for off-the-books meetings for years. "Be careful," Karim told Ahmad, clasping his shoulder. "You too, sir." Ahmad's usual formality slipped, revealing the friendship beneath their professional relationship. "It has been an honor." Samantha felt a lump in her throat at the simple exchange. These men had risked everything: Karim's empire, Ahmad's career, their very lives, all for justice, for truth, for her. They moved swiftly to the fire escape, the metal creaking beneath their weight. 3 floors down, they heard shouting from above. Their pursuers had found the apartment. "Move," Karim urged, helping her navigate the last ladder to the alley below. They ran, the briefcase of evidence clutched tightly in Samantha's arms. Karim knew these streets from his childhood visits to his mother's home, leading them through a maze of alleys and side streets to throw off any pursuit. The subway station appeared ahead, salvation in the form of crowded anonymity. They descended the stairs just as a train arrived, slipping inside as the doors closed. In the relative safety of the crowded car, Samantha allowed herself to breathe. Beside her, Karim checked his watch. 90 minutes until we meet Harlow. "Will Ahmad be okay?" "He can take care of himself." No concern lingered in him, and he has diplomatic immunity through my company. They can detain him, but they can't hold him. The train rocked gently as it moved through the tunnel, the mundane normalcy of commuters around them, a stark contrast to the life and death stakes of their mission. "Thank you," Samantha said suddenly, "for believing me, for helping me." Karim studied her face, reaching up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. "I should be thanking you. For 2 years, I've been collecting evidence, building my case piece by piece, but it was you who found the final proof we needed." The tenderness in his touch, so at odds with the arrogant man she'd first met at the restaurant, made something flutter in her chest. How strange that in the midst of danger, on the run for their lives, she should feel more alive than she had in years. "If we survive this," she began hesitantly. "When we survive this," he corrected. "When we survive this," she amended with a small smile. "What will you do? Go back to your hotels, your life?" Karim's expression grew serious. "That life was built on a foundation of vengeance. Once that purpose is fulfilled..." He shook his head. "I don't know who I am without it." "You're the man who turned $1 million bet into a mission for justice," Samantha offered. "The man who saw value in a waitress when others saw only someone to be dismissed." His smile transformed his face, erasing years of hardened determination. "And you are the woman who refused my $1 million on principle, who survived alone for 2 years rather than compromise her integrity." The train slowed as it approached the next station. Through the windows, they could see the greenery of Central Park. Their destination was close. They exited cautiously, scanning for any signs of pursuit. The park stretched before them, seemingly peaceful on this spring morning. They walked briskly, taking indirect routes, frequently changing direction to ensure they weren't followed. The boathouse appeared ahead, its classic architecture reflected in the calm water of the lake. Outside, 2 inconspicuous men in casual clothes, Harlow's security team, stood watch. They nodded slightly as Karim and Samantha approached, a prearranged signal that the area was secure. Inside, Director Harlow waited, a tall, imposing figure with silver hair and piercing blue eyes. He embraced Karim like a son. "You look just like your father," he said gruffly. "Director Harlow." Karim's voice held deep respect. "Thank you for coming. When the son of Ibrahim al-Fahad calls with evidence of a terrorist plot, I listen." Harlow turned to Samantha, recognition dawning in his eyes. "And Samantha Adams, you've been a ghost for 2 years. Not by choice, she replied. Your father was one of the best agents I ever knew, Harlow said. His death never sat right with me. It wasn't a heart attack, Samantha stated flatly. I'm beginning to understand that, Harlow gestured to a table. Show me what you have. For the next 30 minutes they laid out the evidence piece by piece. Operation Sandstorm in its entirety, the planned attacks, the financial network, the operatives embedded in governments across the Middle East, and most damning, Victor Caldwell's role as their American handler. Harlow's expression grew increasingly grave. This goes deeper than I imagined. He looked up at them. You realize what this means. The implications? That elements within our own government have been compromised, Karim confirmed. That Victor Caldwell wasn't acting alone. And bin Rashid has powerful allies who will try to bury this, Samantha added. Harlow nodded slowly. Which is why we need to move immediately. I have a safe house prepared for both of you while we implement the takedown operation. Both of us? Samantha questioned. You'll need to testify, Harlow explained. And until we've identified and neutralized all of bin Rashid's network, you remain in danger. Karim took her hand, his eyes asking a silent question. She nodded slightly in response. They were in this together to the end. What about the charges against Samantha? Karim asked. Already handling it, Harlow assured them. The evidence you've provided clearly implicates bin Rashid's team in framing her for Caldwell's murder. A commotion outside interrupted them, raised voices, then silence. One of Harlow's security men entered, his expression urgent. Sir, Ahmad al-Zahrani is here. He says it's critical. Ahmad burst in, blood streaking one side of his face. They know, he gasped. Bin Rashid is gone, fled the country an hour ago. But he activated sleeper cells before leaving. They're targeting the UN General Assembly session today. Harlow was immediately on his phone, issuing rapid-fire orders for evacuation and counter-terrorism protocols. How did you find us? Karim demanded, supporting Ahmad into a chair. Director Harlow's team extracted me from the apartment, Ahmad explained, wincing as Samantha examined his head wound. Superficial, he assured her. The next hour passed in a blur of activity as Harlow coordinated a massive security operation. Thanks to the evidence Samantha and Karim had provided, authorities knew exactly where to look, who to arrest, what to prevent. By midday, news broke of a foiled terrorist plot and the arrest of multiple suspects. Bin Rashid himself had escaped justice for now, but his network was crumbling, his assets frozen, his allies under investigation. Operation Sandstorm had been neutralized before it could unleash chaos across the Middle East. It's over, Harlow told them finally. Not completely, these cases never are, but the immediate threat has been contained. And Caldwell's co-conspirators within the government? Samantha pressed, being dealt with at the highest levels. Harlow's grim expression suggested a reckoning that would happen behind closed doors. Now, about that safe house. Actually, Karim interrupted, I have an alternative proposal. 3 months later, Samantha stood on the deck of a sleek yacht anchored off the Amalfi coast. The Mediterranean sparkled around her, its azure waters a world away from Manhattan restaurants and international conspiracies. Arms encircled her from behind, and she leaned back into Karim's embrace. Regretting your decision, he murmured against her hair. Samantha turned in his arms, looking up at the man who had transformed from arrogant stranger to essential partner in the span of a heartbeat. Which one? Testifying against international terrorists, going into witness protection, or agreeing to marry you? His smile still had the power to catch her breath. All of the above. Not for a second. She rose on tiptoes to kiss him, though I'm still getting used to being Isabelle Laurent. Only on paper, he reminded her. To me, you'll always be the waitress who turned down $1 million. And you'll always be the entitled billionaire who learned humility through justice. Their new identities, courtesy of Director Harlow and witness protection, were a small price to pay for safety. Karim had relinquished day-to-day control of his hotel empire, though he maintained ownership through layers of security that even bin Rashid's remaining allies couldn't penetrate. Ahmad had recovered fully, now heading security for their foundation, the Adams Al-Fahad Initiative for International Peace, funded by the very $1 million that had started it all. Justice had been served, though not perfectly. Some conspirators had escaped, others had been protected by political necessity. But the truth was known, their father's legacies honored, and the longest-running operation of betrayal in Middle Eastern politics had been exposed. "Any regrets?" Karim asked more seriously. "Your life in New York? Your career? My life as a waitress hiding from assassins?" She laughed. "Not exactly a difficult choice." The sun was setting over the Mediterranean, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. In a few days, they would be married in a private ceremony, with Ahmad and a few trusted friends in attendance. Life had taken her from diplomatic translator to fugitive waitress, to the fiancée of a reformed billionaire with a passion for justice. Not the path she'd imagined, but standing here in Karim's arms, Samantha knew it was exactly where she belonged. "You never did tell me," she said suddenly. "That night at the restaurant, when you offered me $1 million, did you ever imagine it would end like this?" Karim smiled, drawing her closer. "Honestly, no. But I'm beginning to think it was the best investment I ever made." As their lips met, Samantha silently agreed. Some things were worth far more than $1 million. Truth, justice, and love that began with an arrogant challenge in a New York restaurant and culminated in redemption on the shores of the Mediterranean. Sometimes the most unexpected beginnings led to the most perfect endings.